Hello, as I promised in my previous video, today we will talk about the FiR Audio flagship model M5. It's not new, it was released some time ago, but what is good about flagships, they are aging gracefully. They are still really good and they will be good for few years at least. So getting flagship means that you're getting top of the line sound, and it will be true for quite a long time. In terms of internal design, M5 is a flagship. It's a tri-breed model with 10mm dynamic driver, bunch of balanced armatures, and Sonion electrostatic tweeter. And that all combined with FiR Audio signature tubeless design and inner resonance chamber used to tweak the sound and achieve the best performance, and a lot of painstaking tweaking to achieve the perfection and deliver the sound vision of the company. Actually, I test only two models 5x5 that I released video for and M5, but based on reviews in the internet, company definitely has their signature sound and deliver it with all their models. Probably they have something new coming really soon, but today let's talk about this flagship. Price is also on the flagship level. For the universal version you'll need to pay $2,800. For custom one you'll have to pay even a bit more extra, but it's top of the line segment, so prices there are on that level. And as you can see, package is not huge, but looks fancy. Black with gold embossing wrapped in plastic. I keep plastic on because during the delivery it's already suffered some got some traces of wearing and suffered some not really cautious treatment. Inside you'll get a short manual describing how to put earphones on, that cover for the cable part, earphones themselves, of course, here they are. Let's pull them out. Warranty card and the case with tips. There is not a box here, just some spacer to keep everything tight in the box. So let's remove the box from the table, and here is the case. Inside you'll get pair of foam tips and 3 pair of silicone tips and a cleaning tool and that nice leather case. Accessory set is not huge, but it's common for the universal version of flagship custom earphones. Usually such many companies are aimed towards the custom versions, and universal they offer like a kind of additional service. And as I read, the custom version of FiR Audio M5 also have replaceable filters for the pressure relief, but universal version has them only built in. Here they are, you can see. In terms of design, they are pretty simple, but you know, it's a really utilitarian design. Nothing fancy, but everything is built really well, looks sturdy, reliable and very comfortable. They have that shape that reminds a bit guitar pick, M5 on one faceplate and rabbit ears on the other. Nice combination of red and black, just classic. They have nice, well extended spouts with proper angles that goes deep into your ears, providing even above average sound isolation. And these spouts have 2 lips for holding the tips, adding additional reliability here. And with double flange tips you'll get pretty decent passive sound isolation that will be good even for a pretty noisy environment. So here they are. And cables are made replaceable. Here used MMCX connectors with with raised socket or recessed pins, but also you can get RCX connector, kind of non-standard MMCX-like connector that is more reliable, but MMCX is more standard, so it's a good option for those who like cable rolling and stuff. Stock wire is pretty good. It's high purity silver plated copper with ear hooks formed on both wires. Really nice. No memory wire, so you can't bend them, but no one does ear hooks with memory wire nowadays. I don't know why, because I liked that design. And cable itself is good. It's softer than average, nicely braided, looks accurate. Here is a splitter with chin slider, and beneath the chin slider it goes down to the 2.5mm connector, also made of black metal, so fitting the overall design of earphones. Cable itself not getting hard when it's cold outside, and in all exterior aspects is good. So, to summarize this part, all the outer part, starting from box and ending with design, is done really well. And of course, about the sound, I gave them about 48 hours of burn-in, and there were slight changes in sound during first 15 hours or so. They were not huge, but actually, as it's a high-end model, I think it makes some sense to burn them in when you will buy them before making your initial impressions, to be fully overwhelmed by all the things that they can present. Let's have a player on the table, and it will be Aston Kern SP2000, no more, no less. I think something else won't make full justice of this model. And in terms of sound, of course, this model is technical, it's detailed, but at the same time it's tuned for those who don't need the sound that is focused on the micro contrast, that is analytical and sharp. It delivers a bit of additional emotions, and it's trying to be more energetic, and it represents that small nuances and overtones in a more embossed way to make everything more spicy and fun. It reminds a little bit 5x5, so that's why I made a conclusion that there is a signature sound. But of course, it's making everything on a next level with lot of improvements. So let's talk about the sound step by step. There is not much sense in telling about the technical things of, for example, like depth of low frequencies, resolution or something like that, because they go deep, they deliver a good amount of impact and weight. They are balancing between the weighty and impactful representation. They don't trying to be super weighty or highlight some dynamics too much, just a bit of additional tightness added to the low frequencies to make foundation of the sound a bit more solid. But at the same time, of course, they deliver everything fast, not as fast as typical balanced armatures, because it's dynamic drivers and they're leaning a bit more towards more natural low frequencies. But bass here is universal, of course. You can enjoy some electronic music, you can enjoy acoustic instruments, but for acoustic instruments here present slight coloration that makes low frequencies hyper realistic with a slight of additional nuances and overtones. So it's for those who don't need 100% natural but a bit more fun. Of course, this coloration isn't big, but it gives you a slight additional wow factor when you start listening to this model. And first example, it's Charles Mingus Open Letter to Duke. I used this album and tracks from it in the previous reviews, and I mentioned in one of recent reviews that acoustic double bass that shifted slightly towards the right channel, I call it traveling bass. And in this track it's done in a really interesting way, because at right channel you hear double bass, and on the left channel you hearing bass that goes deep. And on the left channel you getting more instruments that goes to the high frequency domain, and it gives you nice contrast, not only in terms of high and low frequencies, but also left and right ear. And this model renders this track really nicely, and I actually prefer this track with FiR Audio M5 most of all. I will do some comparisons a bit later, but with this track I really like how they represent low and high frequencies and building that contrast. And second example, it's just electronic music, but nice one, smart one with good low frequencies that not dominating. It's Yello, Do It, and they have nice nice relief of low frequencies, and these earphones deliver it nicely. They're not overdoing lows, but at the same time not losing them because of thin and lightweight representation focused on the resolution only. So it's all, you know, people often ask about earphones with maximum resolution, but my point here is that maximum resolution is not for everyone, and subjectively I don't leaning towards the maximum resolution. For me it's not a goal. Good resolution, of course, it's nice, but focus on the micro contrast that helps to achieve it, often leading to not 100% natural sound, and some often sounds too clinical, too analytical, and so on. So, of course, there is also not much sense in speaking about the driver's teaching, because the coherence here is really nice and lows transition to mids effortlessly, and that amount of balanced armature on mids gives you a nice sound that actually focuses around slightly boosted dynamics. Resolution is good, but at the same time model not trying to make that focus on the micro contrast like some other high-end models do, to overwhelm you with the amount of the details. You know, when we're talking about the high-end models, usually, you know, like what you achieve is not a random thing, and it's just a vision of creators implemented in the hardware. So if you're getting the model that tries to achieve maximum resolution, that's what creators want to do. Here creators want to make music, but at the same time, of course, technical sound with slightly boosted emotions and macro dynamics, giving you also additional wow effect, but it's also done really accurately without overdoing things. And the mids are not adding more weight than it's present in the record, but what is present is represented and delivered nicely. So it gives you good body for the instruments, really nice vocal, especially on the properly recorded tracks. And I don't think that there is also some sense to say that these earphones require nice, well-recorded tracks, well-mastered, and so on. There is no typical boost of the presence area, so this model doesn't try to sound more transparent, more forward, more energetic than the record, but what is present in record will be delivered and played. Imaginary stage, of course, is big, spacious, with that holographic effect, with three-dimensional positioning, with nice depth layering and proper layers transition from one to another, because some super analytical models make this transition between depth layers too highlighted, and that also doesn't sound natural. And as a first example of mid frequencies, it's great male vocal, Joe Cocker, Tonight. Unfortunately, it's not a perfect record, but still pretty good one. I'd like to hear Joe Cocker in some audiophilic level recordings, but I've got what I've got, and of course his vocal is saturated with a lot of overtones and that signature voice, and these earphones delivers it really nicely. And also accompanying instruments here also playing their role correctly. And second example, like to make a contrast to the male voice, Nino Katamadze, and inside Gypsy, great female vocal, also not a traditional going to the high frequencies, but more staying at the mids and lower treble, also really rich with timbre, really unusual, really mesmerizing, charming voice. I really recommend you this Georgian singer if you haven't heard her, and if you like vocal jazz, you'll be pleasantly surprised. And this model renders it nicely, not trying to focus on the tiniest details, but giving you more overall representation and more musical type of delivery. And treble, it's also really well balanced, not too boosted, not too forward, not too laid back, so really well balanced with a good extension, really good layering with perfect separation of all that overtones from different instruments, and giving a nice amount of details, but at the same time not trying to be super sharp or super boosted. So nice, well-balanced treble for those who like treble, but doesn't want them to be really forward and aggressive. And of course you'll get tons of air, you'll get small nuances, overtones and stuff that is rendered really well. And first example, it's Blue Lab Beats, Montara. I really like this compilation, Blue Note Reimagined, and that's a good example of interesting electronic music saturated with interesting samples, many nuances and so on. And it goes really high sometimes to the treble area and requires that airness that this model can deliver and sounding in the engaging way. And second example, this time I decided to get the really audiophilic recording. You can see that even compilation stays that. And Anna Nalick, Helplessly Hoping, just a perfectly recorded female vocal that goes really high to the treble area and with a lot of overtones, with a lot of decays and nuances. And FiR Audio renders it nicely without being too sharp. In terms of pairing, they are pretty sensitive, so they don't require some tons of driving power to sound properly or something like that. Sources with black background would be a good plus for them, but at the same time they are not super critical in this aspect. But actually they require some player of the high-end segment. Probably the minimum requirement for them it's something like FiR M11 Plus and other players of the upper mid region, but actually better something from the lower top segment or even higher. And that players usually have no problems with background noise, so almost all that players will be nice with the FiR Audio. Speaking about the conversions, actually from this segment I got only 2 models, and I don't have a huge experience with popular high-end models, so luckily, you know, that 2 models that I own, actually they simplify things for me. First one is Unique Melody Mason 3rd version. It's more natural, more focused on the micro contrast, more focused on the detalization, and more focused on what is called technical sound, sometimes sounding more analytical, less emotional, drier, and so on. And the second one is wait, I'm starting to forget the model. So of course it's Noble Audio Sultan, and Sultan is a slightly more effortless in representation. Sultan has slightly more weight on low frequencies than M5, and on the mids it's slightly less highlighting dynamics and trying to be more on the natural side. But on the treble, actually Sultan is slightly more relaxed, but at the same time it's also detailed, of course, has a good extension, but this one renders treble a bit more forward. So that was two high-end models that I own, and models from the more affordable segment, of course, they are nice, but you know, it's a step forward, especially if you comparing with all that models from the 1000 to from 1000 to 1000 $1.5 thousand area. This is a step forward. Of course, you know, in the high-end segment, steps forward are not big, and I've read some feedback that actually M4 is almost as good as M5, but for less price. I'm not sure, maybe it's really true, I can't confirm or not confirm that. 5x5 actually remains in representation this model, but this delivers lots of improvements, so more detalization on mids, tighter and faster low frequencies, more extended and refined treble. So if you own 5x5 and you want to upgrade, definitely it's safe to recommend you at least M5 and maybe M4. Haven't heard them, but probably because FiR Audio they have that signature sound, and it's not the case when like some more expensive model delivers a totally different signature. So with M5 you get the similar sound but executed on the higher technical level. So to summarize everything, actually M5 is a really good high-end model for those who like dynamic, musical, technical sound, but not focused on the technicality itself, but is also musical, emotional and dynamic. And a slight additional note, I will take about a week or maybe 2-week break in my reviews because I need to relocate to another country, but don't worry, I'll be back. I have a lot of interesting stuff in queue, so it's waiting for its time for reviews. Thank you for listening, thank you for being with me, and of course, have a nice day.